Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tina, and I'm delighted to be hosting a brand new webinar to you today, introducing you to some of the fundamentals of Report Designer. Now, we've had lots of requests for more information on Report Designer because it's not a part of the software you might use every day. There is a lot to it, so we'll be running several different webinars over the next couple of months aimed at helping you get the most out of the available reports and layouts. So if you've attended any of our webinars before, you might find today is a little bit different, especially if Report Designer is unfamiliar to you. Now, there's a lot of content to cover today, so I am expecting the session to last around 45 minutes, which I appreciate is a bit longer than normal. It needs to be that bit longer to allow me to include information and demonstrations that are going to prove valuable to you. Now, Report Designer is not necessarily something you'll get straight away. I really recommend that after today's session, you refer back to the slide deck and re-watch the session recording so you can go through each part step by step. So some housekeeping before we get going. You'll be automatically muted by GoToWebinar, which just means you can't physically speak to us during the session. You absolutely can ask us questions though, and these can be submitted via the questions panel on the right-hand side. Today I have Abby, Angela, Jackie and Michael joining me to answer your questions. And while we do always try and answer all questions, sometimes it's just not possible. So if for any reason your question isn't answered today, please refer to the Sage Help Centre or contact our support team for further help. Today's slides are available for you to download in the handouts area. There's both a colour version and a printer-friendly one for those of you who like to print instead. The session content will be shared to Sage City, so watch out for an email around an hour or two after the session that will provide you with the relevant links. So let's look at what we'll be covering today. I'm going to start by running a quick poll to see how many of you have actually used Report Designer before. I'll then move on to explaining the difference in how some of the standard Sage reports are structured. I'll also be demonstrating how you can change the sort order of your report data and also any rules around sorting. And I'll do the same for groups, so you can try adding a group to a non-grouped report after the session. And finally, I'll explain where you can get further support. So I've just set the poll running to find out whether or not you've used Report Designer before. It should appear on your screen shortly. Now, when it does, if you can just select either yes or no for me, please, and submit your response, that'll be great. And we'll just see what level everybody's at. Okay, I can see the poll must be on screen now because I'm getting quite a few of you voting. So keep them coming. Okay, so I've got about 80% of you voted, so that's brilliant. I'm just going to close the poll. And just to share the results with you, we've got around a 50-50 split today. So just over half of you have actually used Report Designer before, which is brilliant. And some of you brand new to this, which is also brilliant. I will be aiming to give you the basics in today's session, so you have a basic understanding of the standard reports and how you can add sorts and groups to change the look of a report when previewed. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the slides. And we'll start off looking at report structures. So how the standard Sage reports are structured within Report Designer. Now, if you can identify certain elements on a report, it will make it easier for you to make any amendments. So what I'm aiming for is really, I'd like you to feel confident in understanding which sections appear on a report and why. Of the standard reports available in Sage 50 accounts, some are going to contain groups and others won't. So I'm going to focus on a non-grouped report to start with. And I've provided some examples on the slides of some commonly used reports which are not grouped. So you can use these if you want to practice adding groups after today's session. A lot of the examples shown are list reports, which provide you with a basic list of data from the different modules in the software. So for example, your customers module, your suppliers module, your nominal module, etc. So I'm just going to switch to my demo to give you some context on this. So I'll just wait for that screen to change. Okay, hopefully you can all see my Sage 50 account software now. What I'm going to do is run the customer list report to preview, and then we'll start exploring the structure of the report in Report Designer. So I'm going to go to the customers module. I'm then going to select reports. And then in the customer details folder, I'm going to highlight my customer list. Now, when I run this report by clicking the preview button at the top, I'll be prompted to enter criteria to limit the data shown. So if I click OK, the report's going to run for all available data. I'll just maximize that for you. So working from top to bottom, I'll just make that a little bit bigger. Working from top to bottom on the report, what I can see is the date and time of the report at the top left. In the middle, I can see the company name and the report name. And at the right-hand side, I can see the page number. Moving down, I can see the report criteria on the report. So this is the data that I selected at the point of running the report. This also prints on the report output. If I move a bit further down, I can see column headings, and these column headings explain the data that appears on the report. And then underneath that, we can see the main report data itself. So in this case, it's a list of our customers with their contact names, their telephone numbers, and their email addresses. And finally, right at the very bottom, we can see the end of report banner to indicate the report is finished. So let's have a look in Report Designer to see how this report's actually made up. So from a report preview, the easiest way to access Report Designer is via this Edit button from the toolbar at the top. So I'm just going to click on that, and then we'll see the report in Report Designer. Okay, so this is the report design. Again, I'll just make this a little bit bigger for you. So we can see the design of the report is split into several sections. So each section has a grey banner along the top. The sections are numbered down the left-hand side, so we can see they're numbered 1 to 5. And they're also named, so this is so they can be easily identified. As a general rule, on a non-grouped report, the only sections you will see are page header sections, details sections, and report footers. So if you think about these sections like a story has got a beginning, a middle, and an end. So headers are the beginning of the section, the details are the middle, and the footers are the end. So again, I'll start from the top down, just so you can start making comparisons to what we've seen from the report preview. So if I start off in section 1, which is the page header, we can see objects showing me the date and time. I can see the company name and the report name, and I can see the page number. Now, some of these objects are text boxes, while others are data fields, and you can tell the difference between the two by either hovering over an item. So if I hover over a data field, you can see that you get an information box telling you the table and the data field that's represented. If I hover over a text box, I don't get that information. So that's one way of telling the difference. Another way is by double clicking on an object. So if I double click on a data field, I'll just try that again. That opens a new window. So this opens the expression editor, and you can see the table and the data field that's actually being used there. If I double click on a text field, nothing happens. So there's a couple of ways for you to differentiate between text objects and data fields on a report. So moving down to section 2, this is another page header, and this page header contains the report criteria from the report. Again, we can see we have text boxes and data fields in this section. Section 3, another page header, contains the column headings, and these are all represented as text boxes. So they're like the titles of the columns on the report. And in section 4, details, we can see the data fields for the main report data itself. So again, if I hover over each of these objects, I can find out which data field is being used and the table it's being picked up from. So this example is using data fields from the sales ledger table because we're looking at customer information. And then finally, section 5, which is the report footer, this contains a single data field for the end of report banner indicating the report is complete. Now there's another way of seeing how a report is structured, which is by the Report Explorer pane, which is normally accessible from the right-hand side. If it's not there, what you can do is turn it on from the View menu at the top left, and you can see you've got Report Explorer there. Okay, so I'm just going to put it there for the time being. So just to point out, the sections that you see in Report Explorer won't necessarily match exactly to the ones that you actually see on the report. And this is because report sections can be hidden if they're not needed. And I'll be explaining a bit about that later in the session. What we can see, however, are our 3 page headers. So if I click on that, you can see it turns in orange on the main design window. If I carry on clicking, the second page header becomes highlighted and so on. So we've got our 3 page headers. We've also got our details section, and there's our report footer section. Now, each of these can also be expanded within the Report Explorer so we can see what items are contained within each section as well. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on that for now. I just wanted to show you this because it's a really good way for you to see exactly how any report's made up and what items are held within each section. So many of these principles I've explained to you for non-grouped reports also apply to grouped reports. So I'm going to move on to a grouped report now to emphasize how the structure is different. So I'm going to just close out of the customer report, and I'm going to close the customer reports window. And I'm just going to go back to the slides. Okay, so you should be back to the slides now. So these are some of the common reports in the software that already contain either a single group or multiple groups. And you might be familiar with some of these already. So for example, the activity reports that appear in several areas of the software. So these are grouped by either customer, supplier, or nominal code, depending on which report you're running. So I've got a bit of a tip on report names for you. If you find a report called something by something, so for example, product profit by customer or sales by analysis code, it generally indicates there'll be at least one group added in the design of the report. Main differences in the report structure for grouped reports. Again, I'm going to give you an example for context, and this time I'm going to use the supplier invoices overdue report. So I'm just going to switch screens again. Okay, so you should be seeing Sage 50 again. So this time I'm going to go into the suppliers module, and I'm going to select reports, and then the supplier invoices folder, and there's my supplier invoices overdue report that I've selected. So this time, rather than previewing, I'll go into Report Designer just from this main report list by clicking the Edit button at the top left. So just to let you know, this is exactly the same as clicking Edit from the report preview screen. Okay, so the report's open now. Let's start with what we already know from the non-grouped report example. So we can see a page header containing the report details at the top. We can see a report header containing the report criteria we run the report for. Now I know on our previous report the criteria appeared in a page header. The only difference between a page header and a report header is the number of times it appears on a report preview if it runs over more than one page. So just to show you this, if I click on the little preview icon at the bottom to preview the report in Report Designer, and I'll just click on OK, we can see the report criteria appears on page 1 of the report, but if I scroll down onto page 2, the report criteria doesn't appear on page 2. So it just means there's more room for data to appear on each page of the report from page 2 onwards. So if you wanted criteria on each page of a report, what it would need to do is to be sitting in a page header section rather than a report header. So if I go back into Report Designer, we can also see I have a details section and I have a report footer section as well, in the same way as we did in the non-grouped report. So what extra can we see in this report? We should have 2 additional sections belonging to the group in place on the report. So we can see section 3, which is an account ref header, and that indicates the start of a group of data. And I've also got section 5, an account ref footer, and that indicates the end of a group of data. So the key way to identify a section as belonging to a group is if you see any header or footer sections with something other than page or report in front of them, it means they belong to a group. So in this example, I have an account ref header and an account ref footer section, and this tells me the report contains a group on it for account reference. So I'm going to leave that there for now because I'm going to show you how to add a group to a report later in the session. So I'll explain everything you need to know then. So just for now, I'm going to close this report and then I'm going to go back to the slides to recap what we've seen so far. Okay, so just to summarise what I've shown you so far, as a bare minimum, each report should have a beginning, a middle and an end. For example, a header section, a section containing the main report data, and a footer section. The content in page header and footer sections will appear once per page on a report. The content of report header and footer sections will appear once per report, either on the first page for a header or the last page for a footer. To identify if a report's grouped, edit the report to open Report Designer, and you can edit from either the main reports list or the report preview. Check the report sections showing on the report design by looking at the grey banners which are named and numbered. Check the report sections in Report Explorer. So some sections may have been hidden from the report design, so it's always good to know. And if you see any header and footer sections except page headers or footers, or report headers or footers, it means the report's grouped. So a common example you'll see across many of the standard reports will be account ref headers and footers. So why have I told you this? Does it matter if a report's grouped or not if I want to make changes to a report? Well, the answer is yes, it really does. So we're often asked to change the sort order of data on reports. Depending on whether or not the report is grouped dictates how easy it is to achieve this. So I'm going to start by making a couple of minor changes to a report that's not currently grouped, and then I'm going to show you how you can change the sort order of the report. I'm going to use the customer list report in this example because I want to touch on saving reports as a new file and adding text and data fields. So I've added some slides to the deck for these tasks with some basic instructions. If you find after the demo you would like more detail on this, I'd really encourage you to watch the recording of the webinar on personalising your invoice layouts, which goes into a bit more detail than I will be today. So the recording is available through either Sage City or the Webinar Help Centre article, and I'll give you links to both of these in an email you'll receive after today's session. So I'm just going to go back to my demo again. Okay, so I'm going to go back to customers, and then I'm going to go into reports, and then customer details, and there's my customer list report that I want to edit. So I'm just going to click edit at the top left again. Now, all standard Sage reports can't have any changes saved over the top of them, so we need to create a new file. So to do this, from the report menu at the top, select report properties. And in here, you can change the report name and the report description. So I'm going to add the customer department to this report. So I'm going to name it customer list by department. I'll just change that so it's in the right case. There we go. Now, I can change the report description if I want to, but I'm just going to leave that as for the demo. So I'll just click OK to confirm the changes. If I now go to the File menu at the top left, you can see that the Save option is actually greyed out because I can't save over the top of a standard report. So I must go to Save As for the first time. So the Save As window will appear. And what you'll find is that your report will automatically be saved into the My Customer Reports folder. It's customer because we're in the customers module. If it was supplier, it would say My Supplier Reports, etc. So this is great because it means all your customized reports can be accessed in one place. And you can also change the file name if you want, but I often leave this as default of copy of the original file name because it means I can easily work out which report I edited in the first place. So I'm just going to click on Save Now. And what I should see is that my new name and file name are shown at the top left of Report Designer. So I've got customer list by department, and then it's copy of CST list. So I'm just going to close the Report Designer just to show you that the report is now sitting in the My Customer Reports folder within the software. And we've just got the one in there, which is the one that I've just created. If I click on the star to the left of the report name, it will add the report to the Favorites folder, which is the first folder listed when the reports windows open. So it's really handy if you've got a group of reports that you want to use all the time, click on the star to add them as a favorite. So I'm going to go back into my newly created report by clicking Edit at the top left. Now, at the moment, I don't have any department information shown on the report. When it comes to adding objects to reports, there's three things you need to think about. You need to think about what you want to add. So are you just adding text, or are you just adding a data field, or are you adding both? You want to think about where you want it to appear. So which section on the report do you need to impact? And more importantly, do you have enough space on the report to add? And then thirdly, how do you want it to look? Does it look like the rest of the objects on the screen? So I'd like to add the department number for each customer just to the right of this email address column. So you can see I do have a tiny little bit of space here on the report. Now, my first tip for you is to look at how the other columns show on the report. So I can see a heading for the word email. That's sitting in section 3, page header. That's a text box. And remember, I can tell that because nothing happens if I hover over it or if I double click on it. And I also have a data field for email in section 4, which is the details, which does show information if I hover over it. So that's both my what and my where covered. I need to add a text box to section 3 and a data field to section 4. So let's add these now. To add a text box, I'll click Add Text from the Toolbox toolbar at the top. And then I'm going to move my mouse just to the right of the email column in section 3. And you can see my mouse pointer now changes to a plus sign. I'm going to just click once and a box appears, and I'm just going to start typing straight away. I'm just going to type in DEPT just because I'm short of space on the report. Once I'm done, I'll click away from the text box and I can see how it looks. I can then click back on it, and if I want to reposition it, I can click and drag, or I can use my arrow keys on the keyboard if I want a bit more control. I'm now ready to add the data field for the department number. And remember, this needs to go into section 4, details. So this time, I'm going to click on Add Data Field from the toolbar at the top. And then I'm going to move my mouse to the right of the email field, but this time in section 4, details. And then I'm going to click once. Now this time, a new window appears prompting me to select the data field I want. So the department number for the customer sits in the sales ledger table. So if I expand this table, all data fields will be listed in alphabetical order, and I can scroll through to find the one I need. Another tip for you, if I hit the letter D on my keyboard because I want D for department, I'll actually be taken straight down to the field starting with the letter D. So it then just makes it a bit quicker for me to scroll through. So once I've found department number, I'll just click on it and then I can click OK. So I can see now that the field has been added. And again, I can either click and drag, or I can use my arrow keys on the keyboard to line it up. So when you're adding data fields to your reports, your biggest challenge is going to be to identify which data field it is that you actually need. So to help you with this, we've got a brilliant article in the Help Centre, which I've added a link for to the slides. So I'll briefly show you this now, just to give you an idea as to how you can use it after the session. So I'm just going to bring that up. So this is the article. So it's called Tables and Variables Used by Report Designer. And it's an interactive article. It's really good. So I've got a visual representation of Sage 50 here. So what I can do is if I click on customers, for example, and then I can click on New Edit, opens a sample customer record. If I start hovering over any of the fields in the record, it actually tells me which table and variable I need if I want to add it onto a report. So if I click on the defaults option, and then if I hover over the department details, I can see that the department number and the department name both belong to the sales ledger table. So I now know exactly where to get the data I need for my report. So I can't recommend this article enough. I use it all the time. So I'm just going to go back into my design again. So earlier on, I mentioned you need to know what you want to add and where you want to add it, which we've done. So the last thing we need to think of is how does it look? Now, the eagle-eyed of you might have noticed that the new text and data field I've added look different to the rest. So I'm going to show you a really easy way to make your new objects look the same as the existing ones. So I'm going to start off by clicking on this email heading. Okay. Once I've selected it, look at the styles box at the top left of the toolbar. I can see it has a style of heading. So what I want to do is to have my new department text box set to this same style. So if I click on department, so it's selected, and then go back up to the style and basically reselect where it says heading, if I click away, you should be able to now see that the department heading looks the same as the others on the report because it's applied the same style, it's bold and it's underlined. So I can do the same with the email data field. If I click on it and then have a look at the style option at the top, we can see that's set to criteria details. So I'm going to click on the department field, and again, I'm going to reselect criteria details for that too. Again, if I click away, we can see it now looks the same as the other data fields. Now, there are other ways to change font attributes to objects, but that is by far the easiest method. So it's the only one I'm going to be showing you today. So I've completed some of my basic changes. So all I'll need to do now is just to click save to make sure I've saved my changes. And another tip, I would always recommend that you save as you go. So I'm going to now preview this report in Report Designer. So I'm going to go back to the little magnifying glass at the bottom again. And what we should see now is that I've got a new column on my report for the customer department. Now, if we have a look at it, we can see all of the departments are just in a random order because the sort order currently on this report is just sorting in the default order of customer account reference. So what I really want is to sort my list of customers in department number order rather than account reference. And it's really easy for you to add a sort. So I'm just going to go back into design mode. And if I go to the report menu from the top of the screen, you'll find that you have an option for sorts. So if I click sorts, a new window is going to appear to let me add a sort to the report. If I click add, I'm going to be prompted to select the data field or variable, it's just another word for it, that I want to sort by. So I've just added the department number from the sales ledger table. So I'm going to select sales ledger as my table, and then I'm going to select department number as the variable. And again, if I hit the letter D, it's going to take me down to that area, and I can just scroll down until I find the one that I need. So once I've got department number, I'll just select it. And the last thing I need to do is just to confirm the sort order. So do I want it in ascending or descending order? So I'm just going to leave that in ascending order. So it goes from 0 to 6. And then I'll click OK. And then OK again. So if I go back to preview the report in Report Designer, what I should now see is that my customers are listed in order of department number in ascending order. Now, if I want to, I can add a further sort to the report so that within each department, my customers can show by either account reference or account name. So I'm going to go back into the Report Designer to add a second sort. So I'm going to go back into the report menu. I'm going to go back into sorts. And then again, I can click on add. And this time I'm going to sort by the sales ledger name. So I'll select the table, a sales ledger, and then the data field, I'll hit the letter N on my keyboard, and then I can select the name. Now this time I'm just going to set the sort order to descending just to show you how it looks. And once I've done that, it's just OK and OK again, so OK twice. So if I preview the report again, we can now see that the customers are still sorted firstly by department, but within each department, the customers are showing in reverse alphabetical order of name. Now, if I want to, I can easily change the sort order to show in alphabetical order just by amending the current sort. So I'm going to go back into design mode again, and I'll go to report, then sorts. I'm going to select the sales ledger name sort from the list, And then I'm going to click on Configure. And then all I need to do there is to change the sort order from descending to ascending, click OK, and then OK again. And if I preview that once more, we can see within each department, the secondary sort is within alphabetical order of name. Okay. So I'm going to go back into the design and just save the changes. And I'm just going to go back to the slides just to summarize what I've covered with you so far. So just to summarize on sorts, so non-grouped reports can have their sort order changed easily via report and sorts, which I've just shown you. And you've also seen how your data can be sorted in either ascending or descending order. We've also seen how you can add multiple sorts to the report, and you can do this as long as it makes sense to do this. So for example, sorting the customer list by department and then account reference makes sense. But sorting by account reference, then department doesn't make sense. This is because the account reference is unique to every customer, and you can't have more than one department assigned to each customer record in the program. So once you've sorted on a unique field for the data you're reporting on, you really need to just stop adding sorts because they're going to have no further impact on the order of the data on the report. So again, for example, the account ref is always the unique field for customer, supplier, nominal record data, etc. If you're reporting on transactions, TRAN number is the unique field for transaction data. So if you're sorting on TRAN number, it's pointless sorting on anything after that because it's unique. So we're done with sorts for now, but I will revisit them in the next section. So we're going to move on to groups. And this is the last section I'm going to be covering with you today. So I'm going to start by giving you some general rules about groups and then show you how to add a group to a non-grouped report. So first of all, we'll discuss what is a group. So it's a means of dividing a list of report data by something that's shared in common. So for example, you might want a list of customers grouped by the department they're assigned to in the customer record. You might want a list of transactions grouped by supplier account reference or supplier account name. Or you might want a list of products grouped by where they're currently located. So there's loads of examples. Really what you need to think about is what examples you might want to try. In terms of the benefits groups give you, they give your reports structure, which often makes them easier to interpret. Your report data is automatically sorted by any group that's been added to the report. Now, in the same way you can add multiple sorts, you can also add multiple groups if it makes sense to do so. So the two main reasons for adding groups are firstly to provide some structure to the report, which I've mentioned, but secondly, it's the ability to add subtotals for each group of data when there are value fields present. Now you can also add page breaks to grouped reports, so the report data for each group shows on a separate page, and there's lots more. So all I'm going to concentrate on today are just the first two benefits. Everything else I've mentioned is going to be covered in a future session. So I'm just going to go back to my demo. Okay, so we should be back in the report designer screen. Now what I'm going to do is just to remove the two sorts I've got in existence from this report because I just want to get the list of customers back to how it was originally. So I'm going to go back into report, back into sorts, and then I'll just select the sort I want to remove and then click the remove button at the bottom. And then I'll just repeat that process for the second sort. So sorts window is now empty. So I'm just going to click on OK. And then if I preview the report again, we should see we're back in the random department order. We're back in customer account ref order. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the design and show you how to add a group on the report. So from the sections menu at the top, there's a button there for add section, and within here we have group header and footer. So in here you can also add extra report header and footer sections and page header and footer sections if you need to. But I'm just going to focus on group header and footer sections today. So if I click group header and footer, the expression editor appears, and it's asking me now to select the data field that I want to group the report data on. So again, this is another area you need to know the table and data field to group by. So remember, you've got that brilliant tables and variables article that will help you find that out. Now I know I want to group by the sales ledger department number field that I've just added to the report, because I want to group together all customers belonging to the same department. Now there's a couple of ways for you to do this, but I'm just going to focus on this bottom right-hand corner of the window, the section for fields, because it's similar to the process of adding a data field, which I've already shown you. So if I just scroll down the list until I find the sales ledger table, and then I can just click on it. And if I double click on it or click on the little plus to the left, the table will expand. And again, the fields will be listed in alphabetical order. So again, I'm going to hit the letter D on my keyboard and then just carry on scrolling until I find department number. So once I've got department number selected, if I double click on it, you can see it adds it to the main window at the left-hand side. And that is my group added. So all I need to do now is to click OK. So the result of adding a group onto a report in the report design is that two new sections have been added either side of the details section. So I have a new section for sales ledger department number header, a section for sales ledger department number footer. I'm going to preview the report at this point just to show you. So what we can see is that the report data has been split into groups based on the customer's department number. And if we look at the last column on the report, we can see the report is once more sorted in department number order. So if I go back into the design, what I'm going to do is check the sorts window. So if I go back into report and back into sorts, what you see is there's actually no sort showing in here. The sort has been automatically applied by the addition of the new group. So how do we know which direction it's sorting in? So I'm just going to close out of the sorts window, and we can see how the data is sorted by firstly clicking on the group header section. And then we're going to look at properties on the right-hand side. I just need to drag that along a bit. And it's this third property on the list there for group sort direction. And there we can see that the sort is sorting in ascending order. So if I wanted to change the sort order of the group, I can click on the drop down arrow at the right hand side, and then I would just select descending from there. But I'll just leave that in ascending order. And if I just preview this report again, so if we look at this report, in theory, I've got exactly what I need from it. I can easily see the list of each customer belonging to each department in ascending order of department number. But what else could I do to make the report look a bit better? So from this preview screen, let's have a look at what's wrong. So firstly, my column headings, which are the ones that are in bold, are only showing once at the top of each page. So if I scroll down to Department 6, how do I know what each column is down here? Because I can't actually see my column headings because they're at the top of the page. So if I go back into the design, what we can see is that the column headings are currently sitting in a page header section. So remember, these sections only show once at the top of each page. What I can do is move these into the group header section. And what that will do is mean they will show every time a new group starts. So what I'm going to do is to just click and drag a box around all of these headings within the page header. And if I release my mouse, you can see they're all selected. So I can click and drag these into the department number header with my mouse. But what I'll often find is better, and to give you more control, is just to use your down arrow key on the keyboard, which is what I'm pressing now. So I've just moved them from the page header into the department number header. So if I preview the report now, and we'll have a look at the data, the report's already starting to look a lot better because we can see the column headings every time the group of data changes. So every time we have a new department, the headings are repeated again. So what else could I change on the report? Do I really need to see the department number showing against every customer? Now you can leave the department information there if you want to, but this could also be moved into the same section as the column headings just above, so it's acting a bit like a title for each section. So I'm going to go back into design mode, and what I'm going to do is to move the text box for department and the data field for department to just above the rest of the titles in the department number header. So I'll do the department text box first, and I'm just going to click and drag that. And I'll just line that up with the account heading. And then I'm going to do the same with department number. So I'm going to click and I'm going to drag that up, and I'll just drag that close to the department title. So when I preview the report again, what we're going to see is the department only shows once at the start of each new group of data rather than against each line. Now for this, it's just a matter of preference when you're amending a report. Would you rather see it against each customer, or would you rather it appear like this and acting like a title for each department? It's entirely up to you. There's no right or wrong way. What else I could do if my department numbers don't necessarily mean very much to me, what I could do is add the department name alongside the department number. So if I go back into Report Designer, now what I could do is to go back to Add Data Field and then add the data field just to the right. But I just want to show you how you can use copy and paste functionality. So I already have the data field for department number. So if I right click on that, and then I can select copy. And then if I just find a bit of empty space to the right, I can right click on that again and then select paste. So I'll just drag that into position. I'm just going to line that up with the name column there. Now, at the moment, all I've got on here are two department numbers. How do I change the department number to the department name? Remember, with the data field, if you double click on it, it opens the expression editor, and that tells you the table and data field that's being used. So what I can do in this main window, if I click at the end of department number, I'm just going to use my backspace key on the keyboard to actually delete the last part of number. And you can see in the drop-down window, I can now just select department name. Okay, so if you've got some data fields on there that you think it's quite similar to another one, you can always use copy and paste and then change the data field rather than adding it. It's just another option. So I'm going to click on OK, and we're going to preview the report again. And this time, what you can see is that you have the name of the department to the right of the department number as well. Now, we know at the minute that the report is automatically sorted in department order through the group that we've added. Now, within each group, I can sort the list of customers by either account reference or account name. So at the minute, there's no real sort within each department, so I can actually force a sort, but within a group. So I'll show you how to do that. We're going to go back to sorts. So if I go back into the Report Designer and go to Report and Sorts again, So remember, there's no sort in the window for the department number header, but I can add a secondary sort. So it basically sorts within the group. So I'm just going to select Sales Ledger. And this time I'm going to select Name. Again, I've got the option for ascending or descending order, but I'll just leave that as ascending. So if I click OK, we now have a sort added there. And if I click OK again, and then preview the report, so we can see the overriding sort is still in department number order. So we've got 0, 1, and 6. But then within each department, we can see we've got a secondary sort there in alphabetical order of customer name. Now, we often get calls asking why a sort isn't working on a report. And most of the time, it's because there's already a group on the report, and group sorts will always take precedence over a sort added in the sorts window. So if you've ever had that query before, that will be the reason why there's been an overriding sort because of a group. So one last thing I'd like to show you today is how you can hide any empty sections. So I'm just going to go back into the report designer. So in here, we can see I have an empty page header section. Now it won't cause any real issue by leaving empty sections on a report, other than it takes up a bit of space. But what I want to do is to get rid of the page header section where the original column headings were before I move them into the group header. So to hide a section, click on it and you'll see it turns orange. And then we're going to go back to the properties pane. Again, I'm just going to need to drag that along a bit. Now, the property you want is this visible one in the behavior section. And what I can do is just change that from true to false. So I'm going to click on that in a minute. What I want you to do is focus on the sections on screen, because once I change it to false, you should see the section disappears from the screen. So if you remember, I talked about hidden sections earlier in the session. If I go into the Report Explorer pane, I can still see my third page header is there, but nothing's happening on the report. And that's basically because it's been hidden. So I'm just going to save my changes now. So go back up to save at the top left, and then I'm going to preview this report again one last time. So we can just have a look at our final report. So what we've done is taken a basic list report, we've put a group on it, which automatically forces a sort, and then within there, we've added a secondary sort on customer name. Now, I totally appreciate I've given you a lot of information to remember here. So I've added slides to the slide deck so you can see a before and after comparison for what I've shown you on the demonstration. So if you have found the content today a lot to take in, I'd really recommend watching the session again and try and follow what I've shown you at your own pace. I can guarantee Report Designer definitely gets easier with practice. So I'm just going to go back to my slides just to recap. Okay, so remember you can check report sections to identify if a report's grouped. Any header and footer sections other than report and page header and footers will tell you that a report is grouped. When you're adding objects, think about what you want to add, where you want to add it, and how you want it to look. Non-grouped reports are easily sorted from report and sorts. And when amending your report, think about if you need to group the report or will adding a sort do. So groups are added for two main reasons. One, to provide structure to the report, and the other to apply subtotals for values. So I've not shown you adding totals on value fields today, but I will be covering them in a future session. Grouped reports automatically apply a sort to the grouped data. Although this won't appear in the sort window, you can add additional sorts within a group, but you must remember the group sort will always come first. I've also added some links to the relevant areas of Ask Sage. So I've put a link to the tables and variables article I showed you earlier. I've added a link to the Reporting Support Hub in the Sage Help Centre, and that'll give you everything you need reporting wise. And finally, if you find amending reports just isn't for you, we can design reports for you. And I've added the link to explain our report design service. So that's us almost done. I just want to let you know about our upcoming webinars for this week and beyond. So this week we've got another 2 webinars to share with you that are new ones. We've got Jackie covering part 2 of CIS on domestic reverse charge. That's tomorrow at 2 p.m. And Michael's delivering journals at 2 p.m. on Thursday. So please sign up if you feel you'll benefit from either of these. And coming up in December, we've a mixture of frequently run webinars in amongst some more brand new ones. And some of these have been suggestions from yourselves. So if there's a topic you'd like to see a webinar for, please put these requests forward in Sage City. So that brings us to the end of today's session. I appreciate it's been a bit longer than the usual sessions, but I hope you found it useful. So I'm going to stay online for the next few minutes if you're waiting for an answer to a question. If you've got what you need, you can leave the session. I'd just like to thank you for joining me today. If you do have any comments or suggestions for improvement, please take a minute to feed these back when you complete the exit survey. This is a new session and I'd love to get some feedback from you. What I'll do is take a look at your comments for future sessions. And if you watch out for an email from us in around an hour or 2 with links to today's content, you can revisit that if you need to. So I'm just going to have a look to see how we're doing on questions. It looks like we're pretty organised. It looks like we've got most of these questions answered. If you have any more, just keep them coming. I'll see if there's any that I can pick up. Just waiting for another couple of questions to be answered. But it looks like we've had most of them answered already, so I'll just stay on for another minute or so. Okay, I'm going to shortly close the session because it looks like we're pretty much done with the questions. Again, apologies if you haven't had your question answered. Please refer to our help centre or get in touch with technical support. So I'd just like to thank Abby, Angela, Jackie and Michael for your help today. And thank you all again for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on another session very soon. Take care.